He backed her against the mahogany desk, his grip tightening. "Look at me," Roman warned, his voice a lethal whisper. He thought he owned her, thought he knew every vulnerability of the soft, full-figured woman trembling before him. But Clara was holding a secret that would burn his empire to ashes. The heavy scent of turpentine, aged paper, and expensive coffee lingered in the back room of the Gilded Frame, an exclusive art restoration boutique tucked away on West 25th Street in Manhattan. Clara Hayes stood over a beautifully ruined 19th century oil canvas, the bright halogen lamps casting a warm glow over her concentrated features. She was 28, a woman who took up space in a world that constantly told her to shrink. With thick, lush curves, a soft belly pressed against the edge of the drafting table, and a plush, round face framed by messy auburn curls, Clara was undeniably fat and fiercely unapologetic about it. She dressed in flowing linen and tailored aprons that celebrated her size rather than hiding it. But in the presence of the man standing in the doorway, she always felt an involuntary shiver run down her spine. Roman Caldwell did not knock, he never did, as the heir to the Caldwell Syndicate, the most ruthless organized crime family operating out of the 5 boroughs. Roman moved with the silent, predatory grace of a man who owned the air he breathed. He was a terrifying port of masculine power, wrapped in a bespoke charcoal Ermenegildo Zegna suit that clung to his broad shoulders and tapered waist. A heavy Vacheron Constantin watch glinted on his left wrist, a subtle testament to the blood money funding his existence. Clara kept her eyes on her meticulous work, her pulse instantly accelerating. She didn't need to look up to know he was staring at her. She could feel the weight of his gaze, heavy and possessive, tracking the soft swell of her hips and the gentle slope of her neck. "You're working late, Clara," Roman said, his voice a deep, gravelly baritone that seemed to vibrate the very floorboards. "The Caravaggio copy won't restore itself, Mr. Caldwell," Clara replied, her voice steady despite the flutter in her chest. She picked up a fine-tipped brush, dipping it into a solvent. Roman crossed the room in 3 long strides. The ambient noise of the New York evening, the distant wail of sirens, the rumble of traffic, seemed to mute the moment he entered her personal space. He stopped just inches behind her. She could smell him, an intoxicating blend of Tom Ford oud wood, expensive tobacco, and the cold, metallic scent of the winter air. "I told you to call me Roman," he murmured, his breath brushing the shell of her ear. Clara froze, the brush hovering an inch above the canvas. "Roman, we have a professional arrangement. You bring me damaged pieces from your private collection, and I fix them. That's it." A low, dark chuckle rumbled in his chest. "If you think my visits here are just about the art, my sweet girl, you are severely underestimating yourself." Suddenly, Roman's large, calloused hand clamped around her wrist, stopping her movement entirely. The contrast between them was stark, his knuckles scarred and hard, her skin pale, soft and plush. He didn't hurt her, but the sheer strength in his grip was an unspoken threat. Slowly, deliberately, he turned her around so she was trapped between his towering frame and the edge of the mahogany drafting table. Clara gasped softly, her large hazel eyes finally meeting his piercing ice-blue stare. "You're shaking," Roman observed, his gaze dropping to her full, parted lips before trailing down to the heavy rise and fall of her chest. He lifted his free hand, trailing a solitary knuckle down the soft, plump curve of her cheek. "Are you afraid of me, Clara?" "Everyone is afraid of you," she countered, trying to mask her terror with defiance. "You're a Caldwell." "I don't care about everyone," Roman snapped, his voice suddenly dropping an octave, turning rough and urgent. His hand moved to her jaw, his thumb pressing into her lower lip. "Look at me." Clara tried to avert her gaze, overwhelmed by the intensity radiating from him. "Look at me," he warned again, the possessiveness in his tone absolute. He stepped closer, his hard thighs caging her soft ones, trapping her completely. "I don't want your fear. I want your truth. You've been jumpy for weeks. You look over your shoulder when you lock up the shop. You flinch when a car backfires on 7th Avenue. Who is bothering you?" "Nobody," Clara lied, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. "Don't lie to me," Roman hissed, his grip on her jaw tightening just enough to command her absolute focus. "This city belongs to my family. You belong to my territory. If someone is threatening you, I will dismantle them piece by piece. Tell me." Before Clara could form a response, the deafening sound of shattering glass tore through the boutique. A hail of bullets ripped through the front window of the gilded frame. In a fraction of a second, Roman's entire demeanor shifted from obsessive lover to hardened killer. He tackled Clara to the floor, his massive body completely covering her softer, thicker frame, shielding her from the cascading shards of glass and flying plaster. The roar of automatic gunfire echoed relentlessly, obliterating the priceless antiques in the front showroom. Clara screamed, burying her face into Roman's shoulder, her soft body trembling violently against the hardwood floor. Roman drew a sleek black Glock 19 from his shoulder holster without ever looking away from the doorway. "Stay down!" he roared over the noise, his heavy body pressing her securely into the floor. For all her size, Clara felt remarkably small beneath him, completely enveloped by his protective mass. Outside, the screech of tires signaled the shooter's retreat. The boutique plunged into an eerie, ringing silence, save for the hiss of a busted radiator and Clara's ragged breathing. Roman pushed himself up onto his forearms, his icy eyes scanning the destroyed shop before snapping down to Clara. He framed her face with both hands, frantically checking her for injuries. "Are you hit? Clara, talk to me. Are you bleeding?" No," she stammered, tears pricking her eyes. "I'm okay." Roman hauled her to her feet with terrifying ease. His face was a mask of unadulterated fury. "We're leaving. Now!" "My shop." "Forget the fucking shop!" Roman barked, wrapping a thick arm around her waist and half carrying, half dragging her toward the reinforced back exit. "Someone just tried to put a bullet in my head, and they almost caught you in the crossfire. You're coming with me." As Roman shoved her into the back of a waiting, armored black Cadillac Escalade in the alleyway, Clara kept her head down, trying to stop the violent shaking in her hands. Roman thought the hit was for him. He thought the rival families were making a move on the Caldwell heir. But as the SUV sped into the neon-lit Manhattan night, Clara slipped her hand into the deep pocket of her apron, her fingers wrapping around a small encrypted titanium USB drive. Her breath hitched. The bullets weren't meant for Roman Caldwell. They were meant for her. The Escalade tore through the streets, bypassing the Caldwell family estate in Brooklyn and heading straight for Midtown. Clara sat huddled in the corner of the plush leather-back seat, her arms wrapped protectively around her soft middle. Roman was on his phone, barking orders in a rapid-fire, heavily accented mixture of English and Italian. "I want the streets locked down from Battery Park to Harlem," Roman ordered into the receiver, his eyes dark with lethal intent. "Call Leo. Tell him to get the cleanup crew to the art shop. If the Moretti family is behind this, I want their warehouses on the docks burning by midnight." He hung up, tossing the phone onto the seat next to him. He turned his attention to Clara. The furious, hard edges of his face softened slightly as he took in her disheveled state. Her auburn hair was wildly tangled, her clothes dusted with white plaster. But to Roman, she had never looked more intoxicating. He reached across the wide seat, his large hand gently resting on her plush thigh. "You're safe now," he said, his thumb drawing slow, soothing circles on her leg. "I won't let anything touch you." Clara swallowed hard, staring at his hand. "Where are we going?" "The Aman," Roman replied smoothly, referring to the ultra-luxurious, fortress-like hotel on Fifth Avenue, where he maintained a private, off-the-books penthouse. "It's secure. Only my top men know about it. You'll stay there until I find out who ordered the hit." "I can't just disappear, Roman," Clara protested, finding a fraction of her voice. "I have a life. I have clients, a lease." "Your life is whatever I say it is right now," Roman interrupted, his tone leaving no room for argument. "Whoever shot up your shop knows you're connected to me. That makes you a target. You stay with me." End of discussion. 30 minutes later, Clara was standing in the center of a sprawling, multi-million-dollar penthouse overlooking Central Park. The floor-to-ceiling windows offered a breathtaking view of the city. But to Clara, the opulent space felt exactly like what it was: a velvet-lined cage. Roman poured a glass of Macallan 25 from a crystal decanter and pressed it into her trembling hands. "Drink. It will help with the shock." She took a sip, the amber liquid burning beautifully down her throat. Roman took a step back, shedding his suit jacket and unbuttoning his collar, revealing the dark ink of mafia tattoos creeping up his neck. He watched her intently, analyzing her every move. "You're a strong woman, Clara," Roman murmured, pacing slowly around the kitchen island. "Most people would be in hysterics right now, but you're calculating, you're thinking. What's going on in that beautiful head of yours?" "I'm just overwhelmed," Clara lied smoothly. She walked over to the velvet sofa and sat down, the soft cushions sinking under her weight. She hated lying to him. Despite his terrifying reputation, Roman had only ever treated her with a strange, reverent obsession. He didn't look at her like she was a fetish or a joke. He looked at her like she was a goddess he wanted to build a shrine for. But Clara wasn't just a restorer of fine art. 3 years ago, Clara's younger brother, Danny, had gotten in deep with a subsidiary ring of the Russian Bratva, the Kozlov syndicate. To save Danny from a gruesome death over a massive gambling debt, Clara had utilized a skill set she had hidden from the world since her MIT days. She was a brilliant data architect and hacker. Operating under the alias The Oracle, Clara had breached the Kozlovs' offshore banking network, systematically siphoning millions and masking the digital trail, forcing them to back off her brother. But she hadn't stopped there. She had uncovered a labyrinth of human trafficking routes, political bribes and assassinations. She downloaded the master ledger, the very USB drive currently burning a hole in her apron pocket. For 6 months, she had been anonymously feeding the encrypted files to the FBI, watching the Kozlov empire crumble from the shadows. The Russians didn't know the Oracle was a soft, plus-size art restorer in Manhattan. But recently, the digital walls she had built began to crack. They were closing in on her IP location. Roman walked over and knelt in front of her, an action that shocked Clara to her core. The ruthless underboss of the Caldwell family, a man who commanded legions of violent men, was kneeling at the feet of a fat, terrified woman. "I know you're hiding something," Roman said quietly, placing his large hands over her knees. "I'm not a fool, Clara. I've watched you. The burner phones, the way you check the reflections in the windows before you cross the street. You have secrets. I don't care what they are. I just care about you." Clara looked down at him, her heart aching. "Roman, if you knew who I really was, you wouldn't be kneeling." "Try me," he challenged, his blue eyes flashing with fierce loyalty. "There is nothing in this world you could have done that would make me walk away. You are mine. I claimed you the moment you walked into my family's gallery 2 years ago. I just gave you time to get used to the idea." A knock on the heavy oak doors of the penthouse shattered the intimacy. Roman stood up instantly, his hand dropping to his weapon. "Yeah." The door opened, and Leo, Roman's sharply dressed lieutenant, stepped inside. His face was grim. "Boss." "We checked the security footage from the alley behind the art shop. The shooters, they weren't Moretti's men." Roman's brow furrowed. "Then who?" "Russians," Leo said, glancing nervously at Clara. "Kozlov's elite hit squad. But that's not the weird part, Roman. Spit it out, Leo." Leo held up a tablet. "We pulled the shell casings and tracked the vehicle. They weren't aiming for you, but the trajectory. They were aiming specifically at the girl." Roman went completely still. The silence in the penthouse grew heavy, suffocating. Slowly, terrifyingly, Roman turned his head to look at Clara. The protective softness in his eyes vanished, replaced by the cold, calculating glare of a mob boss who had just realized there was a player on his board he didn't account for. "Why?" Roman asked, his voice a dangerous, hushed rasp. "Is the Russian mob trying to assassinate my art restorer?" Clara stood up, her soft curves silhouetted against the glittering skyline of New York. She reached into her pocket, her fingers trembling as she pulled out the silver USB drive. The game was over. The velvet cage was unlocked, but the real fire was just beginning. "Because, Roman," Clara said, her voice finally steady, projecting the authority of the phantom hacker that had brought billionaires to their knees. "I'm not just your art restorer, and if you don't do exactly what I say, we are both going to be dead by morning." The silence inside the sprawling Amman penthouse stretched, growing thick and profoundly suffocating. Roman Caldwell stood frozen, staring at the small, encrypted silver USB drive resting delicately in Clara Hayes's trembling fingers. The soft, plush art restorer he had relentlessly lusted over. The beautiful woman whose thick curves and gentle face haunted his every waking thought, was holding a digital weapon that could single-handedly dismantle global syndicates. "Leave us," Roman commanded, his voice a deadly, echoing calm that sent chills down the spine of anyone who knew him. Leo hesitated near the foyer, gripping his weapon tightly. "Boss, the Russians. We need to secure the perimeter." "I said get out!" Roman roared, the sheer force of his authority vibrating the crystal glassware on the bar. Leo vanished instantly, the heavy, reinforced oak doors clicking shut behind him. Roman slowly closed the distance between him and Clara, his massive, tailored frame towering over her soft, rounded figure. He didn't snatch the drive from her hand. Instead, his large, calloused hands found her and generous hips, gripping her with a bruising, desperate intensity. "The Oracle," Roman breathed, his brilliant, tactical mind rapidly forcing the fractured pieces into place. "You are the phantom hacker the federal government has been hunting for 3 years. You drained Viktor Kozlov's private accounts last winter. You entirely wiped out their offshore shell companies in the Cayman Islands. And you did all of this while restoring 19th century oil paintings in a bloody apron on West 25th Street. They threatened Danny," Clara whispered, her large hazel eyes searching his hardened face for a death sentence. "My younger brother. He foolishly owed them $200,000 in gambling debts." "I didn't just pay them off, Roman. I permanently crippled their infrastructure so they couldn't come after him again. I utilized advanced Palantir subroutines and military-grade AES-256 encryption to mask the routing numbers. I took their master ledger." Roman's broad chest heaved under his bespoke shirt. He looked down at her full, magnificent figure, the heavy swell of her breasts rising and falling rapidly under her flowing linen dress. Instead of the deep betrayal he should have felt for being deceived, a dark, intoxicating wave of pure, unadulterated arousal washed over him. He had always wanted to protect her, to shelter her softness from the brutal, blood-soaked world he ruled. But she wasn't a fragile, helpless bird needing a cage. She was an apex predator, hidden inside a beautifully voluptuous, disarming shell. "You lied to my face," Roman stated, his grip tightening almost painfully on her hips, pulling her flush against his hard, heavily muscled thighs. "For 2 entire years you allowed me to believe you were just an innocent civilian. You let me play the role of the devoted protector. I absolutely needed you to think that," Clara fired back, her own hands coming up to push against his solid chest, though she didn't genuinely try to escape his hold. "If the Caldwell Syndicate had discovered who I really was, you would have chained me to a desk in a basement and violently forced me to launder your dirty money. I am fat, Roman. I am soft, but I am certainly not stupid. I know exactly how men like you operate." Roman's icy blue eyes flashed with a sudden, dangerous fire. He slammed his mouth down on her, completely crushing her soft lips in a bruising, fiercely desperate kiss. Clara gasped into his mouth, dropping the silver USB drive onto the plush Persian rug as her arms instinctively wrapped around his thick, tattooed neck. He tasted like expensive scotch, raw adrenaline, and impending violence. He kissed her like he wanted to consume her very soul, his tongue sweeping into her mouth, claiming the fiery defiance she had brilliantly hidden for so long. His hands roamed possessively over her body, unapologetically worshipping her abundant size, the generous, heavy curve of her backside, the soft, warm roll of her belly, the incredibly thick thighs he had feverishly dreamed of pinning down. When he finally pulled it away, they were both gasping for air. "I don't just want your hacking skills, Clara," Roman growled, resting his forehead against hers, his voice a gravelly whisper. "I want you. Every thick, undeniably beautiful inch of you. But right now, we have an immediate tactical problem. If Kozlov's hit squad located your boutique, they actively tracked your IP. They know you are physically with me." Suddenly, Roman's encrypted smartphone vibrated violently in his pocket. He answered it on speaker, never taking his eyes off Clara. "Boss," Leo's frantic, breathless voice filled the quiet room. "The lobby is entirely compromised. 3 armored black SUVs just pulled up to the Aman. Dozens of heavily armed men are moving swiftly into the freight elevators. They effortlessly bypassed hotel security." "They tracked my phone," Clara realized aloud, her blood suddenly running ice cold. "The encrypted signal. They utilized a Stingray cellular tracker to triangulate my exact location after the boutique shooting." Roman didn't panic. He was a man who thrived in the darkest chaos. He swiftly unholstered his black Glock 19, meticulously checking the loaded magazine. "We are leaving this building. Now." He grabbed Clara's hand, securely pulling her toward the private hidden service elevator located in the back corridor of the penthouse. As the metal doors smoothly slid open, the distinct sound of heavy tactical boots echoed ominously from the main stairwell. The Russian assassins were already on their floor. "Get behind me and stay low," Roman ordered, forcefully pushing Clara's soft body into the deepest corner of the elevator. He decisively hit the button for the subterranean parking garage. The descent felt agonizingly, brutally slow. Clara watched the digital floor numbers silently tick down, her brilliant mind racing with calculations. She wasn't just a terrified victim anymore. She was a lethal weapon. "Roman," Clara said, her voice completely dropping the terrified tremble, replacing it with cold resolve. "If we can safely get to a secure terminal, I can end this war tonight. I still have a deeply hidden back door into the Kozlov's primary server farm, located in St. Petersburg. I can entirely erase their operational funds, permanently lock their internal communications, and immediately expose their local New York safe houses directly to the FBI. But I need a hardline connection, and exactly 30 minutes. The elevator dinged softly at the lowest garage level. "My private safe house in Southampton," Roman stated firmly, his calculating eyes scanning the dimly lit, expansive concrete structure. "It boasts military-grade, off-grid servers. We just need to make it to the vehicle." They sprinted together toward a heavily armored black Mercedes AMG G63, waiting silently in the VIP section. Just as Roman hit the remote unlock, deafening automatic gunfire erupted from the far access ramp. Concrete instantly exploded violently near Clara's feet. Roman shoved her hard into the plush leather passenger seat, flawlessly returning fire with lethal, mechanical precision. He permanently dropped 2 Russian operatives before quickly sliding into the driver's seat and slamming his foot onto the gas pedal. The massive G-Wagon roared to life, tearing recklessly through the garage, completely smashing through the heavy steel security barrier and exploding out onto the midnight streets of Manhattan. The tense, high-speed drive to Southampton was a chaotic blur of surging adrenaline and heavy silence. Clara sat perfectly still in the passenger seat, her specialized laptop open, resting securely on her thick thighs. Her fingers were already flying furiously across the illuminated keys in the dim, glowing light of the screen. She was actively setting up complex proxy servers, effortlessly bypassing secondary firewalls with the astonishing speed of a seasoned digital ghost. Roman drove with one strong hand, gripping the steering wheel, his other hand resting heavily and possessively on her plump knee, providing a constant, deeply grounding physical presence. By exactly 3:00 a.m., the battered G-Wagon pulled up to a massive, heavily gated fortress situated on Meadow Lane in the Hamptons. The luxurious estate was actively swarming with heavily armed Caldwell syndicate soldiers. Roman quickly led Clara down into the underground bunker, a state-of-the-art, climate-controlled command center lined with floor-to-ceiling high-definition monitors. "Do it," Roman commanded quietly, standing firmly behind her ergonomic chair, his large, warm hands resting heavily on her tense shoulders. "Burn their entire world to the ground." Clara deliberately plugged the silver USB drive directly into the primary mainframe. The massive screens instantly flared to life, cascading endless lines of bright green code reflecting vividly in her determined hazel eyes. For the first time in her entire life, she didn't actively try to hide her overwhelming brilliance. She didn't consciously shrink herself down to make others feel comfortable. She boldly expanded, completely dominating the digital space, just as her beautiful, plush body effortlessly dominated the physical one. "Accessing the Central Kozlov network," Clara announced, her voice incredibly cold, analytical, and completely detached. "I am bypassing their secondary biometric firewall. I currently have full access to their global accounts." "Take it all," Roman ordered, his deep voice thick with overwhelming, possessive pride. "I'm not simply taking it," Clara stated, a wicked, undeniably dangerous smile slowly curving her plump, soft lips. "I am securely routing all of their active operational funds directly into the Caldwell Syndicate's highly classified offshore accounts located in Geneva. Exactly $75 million, Roman. And I am simultaneously sending their unencrypted St. Petersburg ledger straight to FBI agent Thomas Miller's direct, secure inbox." Roman watched intently as the staggering numbers ticked upward on the glowing screen, his already massive empire effectively doubling in vast wealth in a matter of mere seconds, while his greatest, most dangerous rivals were simultaneously, systematically eradicated by the federal government. But he wasn't looking at the money anymore. He was looking exclusively at Clara. The incredibly soft, wonderfully sweet woman he had aggressively pursued was actually a ruthless, brilliant queen, an absolute empress who commanded the entire world from a single keyboard. "Transfer is 100% complete," Clara whispered softly, triumphantly hitting the final execution key. "The Kozlov Syndicate is officially gone. Their loyal men simply won't fight for a broken boss who cannot pay them. The feds will easily sweep up the remaining pieces by dawn." She slowly spun her heavy chair around to face him. The surging adrenaline was finally fading, leaving her utterly exhausted, but magnificently triumphant. Roman immediately knelt down directly in front of her again, gently parting her thick, soft thighs and stepping intimately between them. He rested his large hands firmly on her waist, pulling her forward until her soft, round belly pressed perfectly against his solid chest. "You just handed me the entire city of New York on a silver platter," he murmured, his intense blue eyes blazing with absolute, unyielding devotion. "I didn't do it for New York," Clara said softly, tenderly reaching up to thread her trembling fingers through his dark, messy hair. "I did it for you. But Roman, there is one more crucial thing you need to know." He looked up at her, patiently waiting. "I knew they would inevitably find me," Clara confessed, her voice dropping to a barely audible whisper. "I could have easily run. I possessed the necessary funds to completely disappear to a remote private island and never, ever be seen again. But I intentionally allowed my encrypted IP to leak onto a highly monitored, low-level server exactly 3 days ago. Roman completely froze, his brilliant mind rapidly processing her shocking words. You deliberately drew them out. You intentionally used yourself as the bait. I knew they would desperately come for me, Clara said, her intense hazel eyes locked fiercely onto his. And I knew, without a shadow of a doubt, that if they came for me, you would violently step in. You would protect me. I desperately needed the sheer, brutal force of the Caldwell army to physically wipe out their ground forces while I systematically dismantled them digitally. I manipulated you, Roman. A heavy, incredibly tense silence stretched throughout the underground bunker. Clara firmly braced for his legendary, terrifying wrath. She had just openly admitted to playing the absolute most dangerous, ruthless mafia boss in North America. She had utilized his undeniable, raging obsession with her to successfully win a digital war. Instead of explosive anger, a dark, terrifyingly beautiful smile slowly spread across Roman's handsome face. He immediately stood up, effortlessly hauling her out of the chair and pressing her back securely against the cold metal console, his warm mouth hovering mere millimeters from hers. You brilliant, absolutely beautiful monster, he growled softly, deeply worshipping the lethal mind inside her incredibly soft, full body. Do you honestly think that makes me angry? It makes me want to permanently put a massive diamond ring on your finger and a heavy crown on your head. You didn't manipulate me, Clara. You partnered with me. He kissed her deeply, a fiercely claiming, aggressively branding kiss that explicitly promised a lifetime of dark, unbreakable devotion. She surrendered to him completely, her thick, luscious curves melting perfectly into his hard, unforgiving frame. Clara Hayes was no longer just a fat, invisible art restorer, hiding quietly in the dark shadows of the city. She was the legendary Oracle. She was a Caldwell. And together, as a united force, they were utterly untouchable. Is Clara the absolute ultimate mastermind, or what? She expertly used her incredibly brilliant mind and her undeniably gorgeous curves to aggressively bring a terrifying mafia king right to his knees, simultaneously destroying a global billion-dollar syndicate in a single, explosive night. The Caldwell Empire will never, ever be the same with her sitting powerfully on the throne. If you loved this intensely explosive, twist-filled, high-stakes mafia romance, smash that like button, share this video right now with your friends, and hit subscribe for more thrilling, real-life drama stories. Drop a comment below. Would you have boldly risked it all exactly like Clara did?